Welcome. I think I know about everyone here, but if not, I'm Truman Smith. I serve as the board president of AFFA. Great to have you all with us tonight, and especially nice to have John and Tammy Hawkins with us tonight. Welcome. If you didn't already know it, perhaps the television cameras from the local news stations, both in the back of the room and outside doing interviews earlier, indicate that tonight's program is very newsworthy. This afternoon, I was speaking with AFFA's founding mother, Linda Kettner, who can't be here tonight because she's in North Carolina for her father's 94th birthday. But she said, quote, "It's killing me that I can't be with AFFA tonight because this is South Carolina history in the making." By show of hands, how many of you remember the marriage amendment election, Amendment 1 in 2006? Okay, a lot of hands. A few of you were not eligible to vote in 2006, but most of us have grayer hair and remember that. That period of time represented the highs and lows for the LGBT community across the state. The fight leading up to Election Day galvanized us perhaps as nothing has before then or since then. But the loss at the ballot box was unbelievably painful and demoralizing for many of us. And not just because of the loss, but because of the huge margin by which we lost. How many of you remember then State Senator John Hawkins? So, a few hands. John represented an upstate district in the South Carolina House from 1996 to 2000, then served in the state Senate from 2000 to 2008. John is a graduate of Wofford College and the USC Law School and currently practices law at his own firm in Spartanburg. As many of you remember, in 2005 and 2006, John Hawkins led the charge in the South Carolina Senate to place the marriage amendment on the ballot. He was among the most vocal elected officials arguing for a constitutional amendment to ban gay marriage. And in fact, if my memory serves correctly, and it may be off, correct me, John, if I'm wrong, but he actually outmaneuvered the most powerful elected official in the state, the President Pro Tem of the Senate, in order to accelerate a floor vote in the Senate whereby only one senator voted against the amendment. So virtually it was a bipartisan vote against us. But this is America, where over time we move toward equality, not away from it. One person at a time, one law at a time, one court ruling at a time. Sometimes that change seems painfully slow, especially as we live through it. But change is taking place today, and we are moving toward full equality. Tonight's program is a prime example that hearts and minds are changing all across America, and yes, even in South Carolina. Our number one political nemesis in 2006 is today an advocate for marriage equality. And tonight, you get to hear him tell his story for the first time publicly. Please join me in welcoming John Hawkins to AFFA and to the right side of history.
Thank you very much. I want to thank you for inviting me to speak to the Alliance for Full Acceptance this evening. I'm very honored to be here. I'd like to recognize the presence of my very beautiful and formidable wife, Miss Tammy Hoy Hawkins. Some of you may know Tammy as an active member of the League of Women Voters. She also founded and led the Low Country Housing Trust for several years, and in that capacity, she helped many citizens find affordable housing. She is a passionate voice for equality and has been a very positive influence on my life and my mind. As many of you know, I served as a Republican member of the South Carolina General Assembly for 12 years, from 1996 until 2008. The last 8 years of that time I spent in the Senate. As a senator representing one of the most conservative parts of the state, I led the battle to pass the so-called South Carolina Marriage Amendment. This legislation would amend the Constitution to specifically state that marriage would be between, as defined as a union between one man and one woman. All other unions, especially those of persons of the same sex, would be illegal and unconstitutional. Several hearings were held in the Senate Judiciary Committee and Subcommittee on which I sat as a member. Opposition to the bill was led by Senator Robert Ford, who courageously fought against overwhelming odds to defeat or at least ameliorate the bill. Then President Pro Tem and Senate Judiciary Chairman Glenn McConnell argued strenuously against ramming the bill through the Senate. To his credit, Senator McConnell wanted to give opponents of the bill their chance to be heard and for the bill to be fully debated. Both Senators McConnell and Ford fought valiantly for due process and equality. To my regret, I was on the other side of that fight. With the zeal and aggressiveness of someone convinced of the rightness of their position, I worked hard to get the marriage amendment passed. In reality, the outcome was never much in doubt, but I certainly became the public face of the push for the marriage amendment. In meetings and on the floor of the Senate, I was very vocal and outspoken in support of the measure. Being an attorney, I used legal arguments, never religious ones, in support of my position. Why did I take such a leading role pushing the amendment? I felt that from a legal and constitutional standpoint, making a change in public policy so fundamental and so important to so many citizens should be done by the democratic process. At the time, several courts in other states had issued legal opinions which invalidated or brought into question the idea that a state could ban same-sex marriage. These initial legal skirmishes set the stage for larger cases of more impact that would come later on. Many of my constituents worried that South Carolina could be next. My position was that if South Carolina was going to allow same-sex marriage, it should be done through the Constitution and the ballot box, but not through unelected judges making policy by judicial decision. This narrow view of the question was just that, narrow. It was also erroneous and short-sighted. But at the time, I genuinely believed that the appropriate way to change the law regarding marriage was to put the question to the public by way of a constitutional amendment. We now know the result. The marriage amendment passed both houses by an overwhelming majority. When the amendment was voted on in November of 2006 by the general public, it received a whopping 78% approval, and then it became the law of the land, which it has been ever since. In preparing my remarks for today, I have reflected on my state of mind and what drove me to be so active on this issue at the time. That's somewhat difficult to do 8 years later, and like all people, my motives were not single-faceted, but nuanced and complex. I truly felt, as I stated before, that this was a question of constitutional democracy. This was a popular issue to the Republican electorate, and it remains so today for reasons which I will explain in more detail later on. Obviously, doing the will of my constituents as best as I could identify the meaning of that will was my job as an elected representative. But I know now on that occasion, I did my job a little too well. So now we come to the present time. As best I can tell, the reason I was asked to come here is because of a Facebook post I wrote on June 26 of this year. I was commenting on the Supreme Court decision in the case of United States versus Windsor, which held that the Defense of Marriage Act, a federal law that defined marriage as between a man and a woman for the purpose of federal benefits, is unconstitutional. A good friend told me a long time ago that there's nothing deader than an ex-politician. So at the time I wrote the post, I honestly didn't think anybody would care. I wrote it because I was sorry that I had fought against marriage equality. I wrote it because I wanted my two girls to have something in writing from their dad on the public domain that I was wrong on the issue and was stating so publicly. I wanted them to see, and anyone else who cared, that I was repudiating my earlier stand and openly coming out, as it were, for marriage equality. Here's what I wrote at the time. In my past days as a state senator, I was active in working for a constitutional amendment banning gay marriage. With time and much consideration, not to mention a dose of enlightenment and empathy, I realized my past positions in this regard were wrong, and I honestly wish I hadn't been so strident against gay marriage. I have come to see discrimination against gay people as a great wrong, akin to discrimination against blacks, women, and other minorities. I believe that if a gay couple desires to get married, they should have the same rights as me. One cannot undo the past, but there is time left in life to change one's mind and reject discrimination of any kind, in any form, and against anyone. That's what I wrote in June. And from my conservative Facebook friends, I received some interesting comments, but mostly outright silence. Right now, in Russia, gays are persecuted and treated like criminals. Some are even jailed. We know that Adolf Hitler thought gays as subhuman and murdered thousands of them in concentration camps. Even in America, hate crimes against gays are perpetrated weekly, if not daily. I would say to you that America should be better than that. And America should not have laws on its books that give aid and comfort to those who have prejudice in their hearts against gay citizens. The problem with prejudice is that to discriminate against one minority group is to give cover to those who would discriminate against other groups as well. Hatred, negativity, and blind discrimination are vicious vectors for violence and cruelty. The marriage amendment and laws like it give discrimination against gays the shroud and veil of legal authority. It says that gays are not as deserving as straight persons of the protections of the law. And it deprives gay citizens of one of the most basic rights imaginable, the right to marry. As it was with civil rights in America, so it is with this. In the South, civil rights would never have happened had it depended on a vote of the people. The popular will was against equal rights for blacks. It took the Supreme Court of the United States to summon the courage to end discrimination against them. Likewise today, the court is there to protect the rights of the minority against the whims and power of the majority. If a true constitutional right is implicated, as it is here, the court should step in and do the right thing. That's what happened in the recent DOMA decision, which is limited in its impact, but will lay the foundation for other court decisions which will start to chip away at the discriminatory laws against gays in this nation. I believe that during our lifetime, probably sooner than any of us can think, we will reach a point where we look back on the days of legally sanctioned discrimination against gays with wonder and astonishment, where people will say, you know, what the hell was the big deal anyway? In a moment, I want to share with you a brief presentation of why I believe so many politicians are against marriage equality and offer some hope for the future. But before I do, I just want to say to those of you who have fought and continue to fight for equal rights that people can change their points of view. I am by nature a very passionate and relentless fighter for what I believe in. When it came to the marriage amendment, that fighting spirit was misdirected because it sprang from beliefs which, though honest and well-intentioned, were simply off the mark. I look forward to a day when, throughout this great land of equality and liberty, our gay brothers and sisters are accorded the same rights as everyone else, and discrimination against them in any form will have passed into the distant and unpleasant memory. Thank you. Thank you so much. Now for the fun part. I want to share with you my personal evolution. I've shared with you my personal evolution, okay? And now I want to share with you my thoughts on the big picture. And this is from the Politico in me talking now. And a lot of this stuff is easy for me to say because I'm not in office anymore. All right? So I don't have to ask for anybody's vote. I can just say what I want and be who I am. So that's what I'm going to do. And if you forgive the PowerPoint, I am a lawyer, so, you know, it's just like a jury argument. I want to talk about the political climate that we find ourselves in the Deep South, because you really can't take South Carolina in and of itself. You have to look at the political climate throughout the whole Deep South. Why is it the way that it is? Do you ever stop and think about that? Why did you / now we lose, and this was your fight, by the way, the marriage amendment? Why did that happen? What were you up against? You were up against something that is immense, that is immensely powerful. And what is that thing that is immensely powerful? And why did it come down to being 78% of the people of the South? And why do you get such a deaf ear from Republicans and Democrats alike in South Carolina? Because to address the problem and to figure out how to move forward, we must first know what the problem is and identify it honestly. And that's the difficult part with this, ladies and gentlemen, is identifying the root cause of discrimination against gays in the Deep South and throughout the nation. But I'm just going to concentrate mostly on the Deep South. What is the root cause? And if we can find the root, then and only then can we rip it out and truly move forward and make progress. Well, we know who runs South Carolina, right? Okay? And I'm not sure this is necessarily a great thing, even though I was one. You know, I'm more of an independent now, as you probably can imagine. I don't believe I'll be asked to run for any Republican public office anytime soon. In fact, I've told somebody I'm kind of a recovering Republican. You know, it's a 12-step program. Step 1, grow a heart. But Republicans run South Carolina, and that's just the way that it is. And they run the Deep South, too. And so always we have to look at the numbers. What are the numbers? What are the demographics? And this is what we come into here. Who controls the GOP? This is the makeup by religious affiliation. Look at that number. White evangelical Protestant, white mainline Protestant, and so on and so forth. Other and religiously unaffiliated. Look at that number. Those numbers are remarkably similar to the marriage amendment, aren't they? To the demographic in the vote there. But we say, okay, well, we've still got the Democrats, right? We've still got the Democrats. Look at the Democrats there, too. Still, I mean, a majority are in some way religiously affiliated. Now, in my comments tonight, by the way, I am in no means to offend anyone of any religious stripe, okay? I am simply speaking honestly and truthfully about what I believe is the root cause of Deep South aggression and anger and discrimination against gay people. You see, it's in both parties. Now, what does all this mean? Where does it all come from? Courtesy of the Westboro Baptist Church. Now, this kid here is a child who's being manipulated to hold up these vicious, disgusting, hateful signs in the name of his religion. This child believes that this will guarantee his entry into heaven. And this child is taught that not only are gay people going to hell, but anybody out there who doesn't do everything they can to tear down gay people is going to hell as well. This kid isn't just holding it up for the heck of it. He truly believes this. And I've read a biography of a lady who escaped from this church, and she talks about that. Now, is it just the radicals that believe this? Just these are the ones we see on the news the most. Is it just the radicals? Who else is it? Archbishop John C. Niedstedt. Good German name. irony there. This is what he said. Today, many evil forces have set their sights on the dissolution of marriage and the debasing of family life. Sodomy, abortion, contraception, pornography, the redefinition of marriage, and the denial of objective truth are just some of the forces threatening the stability of our civilization. The source of these machinations is none other than the father of lies. Satan knows too well the value that the family contributes to the fabric of a good, solid society as well as the future. Now, this is an archbishop over 2 states in the United States of America. Regardless of what the Pope is saying, that's what this guy is saying just this year to millions of people who are, quite frankly, not willing to think for themselves. They are drawing their prejudice from a religious, fundamentalist perspective. Here we have Dr. James Dobson, who blamed the Connecticut school shooting, Sandy Hook, on homosexuality. Now, this is similar, ladies and gentlemen, to the Jewish blood libel. Does anybody know what that is? It's an anti-Semitic belief that has been perpetrated for years by anti-Semitics to say that Jews have rituals where they kill Christian children and drink their blood for their perverse purposes, okay? This ritual actually has led to pogroms by various groups over the years, including the Holocaust, to say that we are going to set this group apart, we are going to assign to them certain responsibilities for crimes that they didn't commit. And then it's okay to go and get them and to kill them and to beat them up and to do other bad things to them. This is no different than the Jewish blood libel. It is attaching to homosexuals, to gay people, the responsibility for absurdities, for hurricanes, for school shootings, you name it. Where do fundamentalist Christians get their prejudice against homosexuals? Anybody know? From this loving and accepting book. This is 1 Timothy. Now, we're told that the New Testament is nicer than the Old, but this is what the New Testament said. Sexually immoral men who practice homosexuality, enslavers, liars, perjurers, and so on. So, this text in the Bible places being gay along with lying, perjuring, enslaving, and then the catch-all at the bottom, which I particularly like. And this is what we know that the book in the Old Testament, Deuteronomy, says to do with people that are gay, to stone them. If a man also lie with a mankind as he lieth with a woman, both of them have committed an abomination. They shall surely be put to death, their blood shall be upon them. That's pretty serious stuff right there. Now, we can laugh at it and say it's absurd, but that little boy holding up that sign and millions of fundamentalists in the Deep South, they take this as the true word, as what God really wants done. So you cannot deny this. We cannot pretend that this doesn't exist. We all know the story of Sodom and Gomorrah as well. There are millions of people in the Deep South that truly believe this actually happened, that God reduced this city to rubble, put a mushroom cloud over it, and blew it to smithereens because there were gay people there. There are people, your neighbors, ladies and gentlemen, that believe this story actually happened. And so, yeah, and then even this lady here that turned around and looked, that's Lot's wife, she got turned into a pillar of salt. God was really pissed. Make no mistake, put a nuclear bomb over 2 cities, blow them up, men, women, and children, and a woman that has the temerity to turn around and look. I think I would have turned around and looked if I saw a nuclear bomb go off behind me, but she's turned into a pillar of salt. That is one angry deity. Now we have our other culprits of anti-gay bias in South Carolina. There's nothing quite like the South, by any means. I love that version of the mullet there. That's beautiful. we have the famous redneck couple. So we know that there's not only religion is to blame for anti-gay bias, it's transcendent in the South, right? And then we have this. We have these jewels. Pumping ignorance and hate-filled propaganda into the minds of citizens every single day. They take a page right out of Joseph Goebbels in the Third Reich, who said, if you tell a lie loud enough and long enough and you shout it with particular hatred, it will appeal to the masses because the masses are more likely to respond to hatred and anger than they are to kindness and love. And these people know that, and they ooze the stupidity into the brain of millions and millions of people every day. And that's why you get these crazy stories. You ever watch these conservative networks? And they're doing a story on a bake shop somewhere that is supposedly going to be shut down because they will not make a cake for a gay wedding, and all of a sudden the gays are outside and they're shutting them all down. First of all, I don't believe that one bit. I think their cakes suck, and that's why they're going to get shut down. And I don't believe there are gay people actually going to go out there and shut them down. And if Chick-fil-A is any indicator, it's a big boost to the bottom line. So, and I worked 5 years as a kid at Chick-fil-A, but that had nothing to do with my transgressions. I'll tell you that right now. We just fried fries and fried chicken is all I ever did. This is what we were up against, but there is hope. Let's look at some other Bible verses that have gone by the wayside over time, that have the same ink, the same presence, the same, written by the same divinity, and we look on them now as, and society as a whole looks on them now as absolutely ludicrous. Slavery, for one. Slaves, be subject to your masters with all reverence, not only to those who are good and equitable, but also to those who are perverse. 1 Peter 2:18. And we know now the Emancipation Proclamation. We know now that slavery is despised by all civilized people everywhere. We know now that this Bible verse is a dead letter in the law. We know that nobody's going to go out and hopefully enslave people on the basis of this Bible verse. So if this can go, if this can be overcome by rational thought, by civilized societies, by love, by empathy, by good sense, why can't the other Bible verses that inspire so much prejudice against you, why can't those be overcome as well? And I believe that they can with time. Genocide. Believe it or not, just like there are parts of the Bible that mandate killing of gay people and harming of gay people, there are parts of the Bible that mandate genocide. As you approach a town to attack it, first offer its people terms for peace. Now, I'm okay right to this point. This is pretty, I can kind of agree with that. If they accept your terms and open the gates to you, then all the people inside will serve you in forced labor. You kind of lost me there. But, so that's the carrot. But if they refuse to make peace and prepare to fight, you must attack the town. When the Lord your God, those are not my emphasis, by the way, the Lord your God hands it over to you, kill every man in the town, but you may keep for yourself all the women, children, livestock, and other plunder. You may enjoy the spoils of your enemies that the Lord your God has given you. Yeah, serious stuff. And would be merely a curiosity, except for the fact that we know certain people took this as the literal truth. And there they sit in the dock at Nuremberg. It's exactly what Hitler did. And partially what justified in his mind his war against the inferior people of the world. I keep coming back to the whole Nazi theme, and I believe that it is that prejudice against Jewish people, gypsies, homosexuals, whoever, that when we have prejudice against people, it opens the door for horrific violence and horrific acts that normal, good, decent people otherwise would never engage in. Women. Now, I happen to be married to a very strong woman. A very, very strong woman. And I do not ever want to incur her wrath, and I try not to, but I do anyway because I'm a man and I'm dumb and I don't know any better. Here's what the Bible says, and Tammy, please take special note of this. I do not permit a woman to teach or have authority over a man. She must be quiet. Yeah. I don't think somebody I know didn't read that. Look at these women here. They didn't listen to that, okay? So this verse here, just like the verses I showed you earlier that preach hatred against gay people, this verse has become a dead letter in the law for the most part. And finally, witchcraft. You shall not let a sorceress live. And we know what happened there. We know that on the basis of biblical verses, people, many people, women were burned to death right here in America over this Bible verse. That's exactly where it came from. So, my point to you in my closing is that the paranoia, the prejudice, the bias, the stupidity, to the extent to which it is derived from the Bible verses that I showed you earlier, I truly believe that that will pass. And I believe that in time, the source of the discrimination that comes from the Bible will be in the place of the other, the slavery, the genocide, the verses against women, whatever, that there will be a dead letter in the law. And I think when that happens, we will begin to make progress, when people start to see the verses that I showed you and look at, don't just read the part of it, read the whole thing and read it in its context. And when they start to see that, they will see that they are wrong, and they too will evolve. Now, I'd like to open the floor up for any questions that you might have. Yes, ma'am.
You left politics 5 years ago, right? Or in 08?
2008, yes.
Okay. So in 08 to 2013, what was the main, was it like all of a sudden a year later, or you decided to start leaning off of it?
Yeah, it's like the movement of a glacier. It's moving, but you don't actually see it. And I can't really identify any one particular thing, but I know that over time I have become increasingly more uncomfortable with the fact that I led the charge for the marriage amendment, because I'm not changed basically as a person, and that really wasn't who I was. And so I hope that answers your question. Yes, ma'am.
When did you get married?
September 29th, 2012.
There you go.
That was the day. Yeah.
Is that right, Tammy? Is that right?
I knew this was going to. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I'm sorry. In the back, you had.
So should we expect you to fight as hard to repeal this now as you did and to put it in place?
I'm good to have on your side, and I'm bad to have against you. So yeah, anything I can do.
When is your next? When are you going to run it?
Well, I think after today, I pretty much that's gone. I'm kidding. I tried again I ran for my old Senate seat last year. The Tea Party has completely taken over the Republican Party. I was not considered to be conservative enough to achieve supremacy in the primary. So, yes, sir.
What do you anticipate would happen to your law practice if you went on WSPA television and said you now support the marriage of gays? That's because, remember, Spartanburg is in the backyard of Bob Jones University, which not only, well, you said it correctly, and I spent 8 years at Channel 4 in Greenville.
Yes.
So I know how powerful Bob Jones University is in that area. I'm concerned that your law practice would shrivel up and...
Oh, God, I hope not.
But what is your assessment?
Well, my assessment is that my clients expect me to fight. They expect me to fight for them and for their rights And usually people, by the time they come to see me, somebody stepped on them pretty good, because I represent working people that have been injured in accidents, whether it's car wrecks or at work, and they're dealing with some mammoth insurance company, and all the deck is stacked against them. And I think that in some small way they would feel some solidarity, you know, to other groups that are being stepped on as well. So, you know, look, lawyers are supposed to be fighters for what's right. And sometimes it just takes time, and sometimes it just takes a different opinion. You know, it takes time and it takes an evolution. But we're supposed to fight for what's right. We're supposed to stand up for the little guy. And this is so much more, I'm so much more at home in this side of the argument, really, with who I am as a person. Yes, sir.
You know, I hear a lot of great words from ex-politicians, but not so much from sitting politicians. Do you have any feeling for how many politicians just say stuff to please their constituents, things that they don't really themselves?
All of them. The ones that want to get reelected do. But I know you, sir. I know you because I've seen a YouTube video with Richard Dawkins. Yes, sir. I saw that. That was great.
I share your biblical views as you presented them today.
Yes. Well, it's been a late realization of mine. I was raised in a Southern Baptist church, and it was a later in life realization of mine that what I believe the true genesis of the hatred toward gays is from, and it's from parts of the Bible, unfortunately, because that's what's preached on Sunday, and that's what drove that number to 78%. Don't you be misled. It was the preachers telling the parishioners and the congregations to go out and vote against the gays because it's an abomination against God. And so, you know, hey, do I go to hell or do I go vote against the gays? Well, I think I'll go vote against the gays. That simplistic mentality. But you better believe that's what's driving it. Yes?
Do you think, you mentioned daughters, how old are your daughters?
15 and 10.
Do you think that your daughters had anything to do with your turning around?
Yes. Yes. Because my 15-year-old, she came to me and she said, Dad, you know, I don't understand what the big deal is about. If two people love each other, why shouldn't they be able to get married?
And I think that they're on our side, the kids of today.
Yes.
Not all of them are being
Brainwashed.
brainwashed.
Yes. I think you're right. That's why I think there's hope for the future. Sir.
I agree with everything and definitely think that religion plays a huge part in everybody's decisions. But another thing that I think has helped us gay people is more and more people are coming out, and more people of power or from good families or whatever the situation they're coming out. And sometimes it takes having somebody in your family who's gay to, and I was just wondering, do you have anybody gay in your family that you know of?
No.
And then my other part is, if society realizes that being gay is not our choice and that we were born this way, then the whole religion thing kind of would be almost by the wayside if
Right.
we could get people to realize that we aren't choosing to be second-class citizens.
Right. I was in the Army for 23 years, in the Army National Guard, retired as a major, and the only times in my life that I'd ever been encountered a gay man up until, you know, a few years ago was in the Army. And these poor guys were the most tortured people in the world, because this was before Don't Ask, Don't Tell. I mean, I got in 1986, and you know, these poor guys, you know, they were totally torn up inside from between who they were and what the law and the military told them they could be. And you know, and I'd like to think then that I was open-minded enough to be their friends despite that fact, or despite any personal risk to myself or my career, you know, that I didn't care. And I knew that's who I was. And so, you know, it's all the more reason I'm really glad to be on this side. Yeah, yes, sir.
Well, I'm going to follow Trevor's question. Is what we get asked all the time is, At what age did you choose to be heterosexual?
Right. You get asked that question? You asked that question. Exactly. Exactly. Well, and then this whole notion in religious circles that you can convert or change or what's the word? I forget, there's some ludicrous word for it, you know, that you can basically be forced to change back to whatever. I mean, that's a basic misunderstanding, you know, that a lot of people have. Yes. Yes, ma'am.
So the Common Family Council was the big organization lobbying for the passage of this amendment, and now they're very interested in kind of getting rid of books and colleges. But anyway, so can you share with us maybe some of the successful strategies of the Common Family Council, so perhaps we can learn?
Their strategy is a very, very dedicated base that, you know, has been successfully persuaded by the means I showed you earlier to believe that it's an abomination, you know, that it's that God has specifically said, I hate this. I hate these people so bad I'm going to blow them up in a mushroom cloud. And so these people are blind. They have no ability to see outside of that. And that's a very difficult thing. I don't think you're going to reach those people anytime soon. But there's a thing called, and the professor probably knows, I know you know this, is zeitgeist, which is the spirit of the times. You know, the way we treat animals now is entirely different than the way we treated them 2,000 years ago or 1,000 years ago. The way women, the rights accorded to women now, totally different because of the changing of the times. And this is no doubt part of that overall evolution of mankind, to the point to where, to your point, the younger generation is not going to buy this garbage. They're not going to buy it. So you go after the movable middle and the people that are you can convert.
Do you see a change? You come from Greenville. Are you seeing a change in that area?
Yeah, well, we just had a...
you just had your pride parade.
yeah, yes.
And I saw very few of the,
Yeah,
it's like we see in Columbia with their
absolutely.
sodomy signs. Do you
Yes.
see a change
I do.
up there?
I do. I'm shocked. I mean, I think there's a whole lot more people that want to be just free-thinking people than there are, but there is a massive amount of peer pressure
Oh, yeah.
to be a certain way and to feel a certain way. Yes, ma'am.
So, just to preface that I teach Sunday school to middle school youth, and I do think that young people are totally not okay with thinking gay people are bad, whether or not they're gay or not.
Right. You're a beer drinking Sunday school teacher. You're my kind of lady. Yeah, I like that.
So, I just hate the us against them thing, and I just wonder if you would
Us against no.
gays and against church people, because I'm both.
Isn't
I
it
don't
though?
like them.
Isn't
I don't
it?
think it has to.
Yeah. It's. I mean, I agree with you. If you have a fundamentalist belief that these words that are written are absolutely true and you must follow them or you will go to hell, that's fundamentalism, right? If you don't believe that, and your religious beliefs allow you to have a broader perspective, sure. I mean, it doesn't have to be us versus them. But we didn't make it us versus them. We're not the ones trying to essentially obliterate them off the face of the earth, okay? It is the James Dobsons of the world and the Jerry Falwells of the world and the Pat Robertsons of the world that would just as soon see gay people vanish. Now, how does that happen? I don't know what ideas he has for how that's going to happen unless it's the mushroom cloud. Yes, sir.
So in 2008, after Proposition passed, Nate Silver predicted when each state was going to come around, so to
Yeah.
speak, and the population would tip in favor of gay marriage. And South Carolina was in 2023. So provided that happens, and we finally have legislators who are in 10 years, who are pro-gay marriage and everything, what sort of procedural things have to happen in order to get that constitutional amendment taken away? Like, do they have to do the votes in two separate sessions and then present it to us, or is it just like
Yes.
straight up one
because of my actions and the actions of other people, it will be now more difficult to overturn it in South Carolina.
What has to be done?
Constitutional amendment, revoking the prior statement or amending the current law.
So another vote.
Another vote of the people.
The
The federal Supreme Court could overturn it on a federal constitutional basis.
How about the state Supreme Court, which has 3 Democrats?
Well, the state Supreme Court, in theory, could do that. But again, they are elected by the General Assembly, and so the public as a whole is going to have to change before anything is done. To that extent, I mean, it was a no-brainer what was going to happen. I mean, my realistic political side said it's going to be a big vote in favor of the marriage amendment. And so, and it still would be today. It still would be today. But there was no reason why, and one of the reasons why I really regret it is that there was no reason why to rub that in people's face. Say, here, because there was no danger, really, of gay marriage being legalized in South Carolina. Sir?
Yeah, I was wondering what you think as a lawyer of the legal cases that are winding through the courts now. For instance, there's a lesbian couple in Columbia. So
Yes.
what are your thoughts on that and timelines for that sort of activity?
I spoke with John Nichols, is a friend of mine, and he's representing that couple. And he says, and I asked him, I said, I'm going down to speak. He said this is in the very early stages of litigation. It's in federal court. So, yes.
I was just curious, since you've had this wonderful change of heart, how are you helping to educate other heterosexuals to turn around their way of thinking?
Well, I guess just by example. I mean, they posting things on Facebook, just being who I am. I'm not out there crusading or anything like that, because I don't believe anybody would give a damn what I say or think. But I'm doing everything I can. Yes, sir.
How long until the Tea Party implodes? Because sooner or later, they have to implode. Legally, just the whole mindset. And individuals such as yourself, who was a staunch Republican, who is now an independent, you guys are peeling off and leaving the party because of that. So how long will they implode?
Well, the Republican Party, as it used to be in South Carolina, was not like it is today, which you make a good point. The Tea Party is going to marginalize Republicans out of being a majority party, and you're already seeing that. And that's not going to happen in the Deep South anytime soon. But slowly, there is a turn. The other part is the libertarians, so-called libertarians, because libertarians should be on our side. Libertarians should believe keep government. If it doesn't harm me, if it doesn't harm anyone else, then what difference does it make? And but again, they have to go look at that same chart that I showed you, and it affects the way that they vote. I don't know. I got my stopwatch set for when the Tea Party implodes.
Don't hold your breath.
Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
I just want to say, on the religious side, if anybody in here believes that those Bible verses are what people are telling you they believe it's not, the one from Leviticus is about heterosexual males raping males that came to the city, and it was about a hospitality issue. It was not a homosexual, that's who they were at. And the one in Timothy says, if you lie with a man as you do with a woman, then you're wrong. Well, I don't lie with a man as I do with a woman because that's not my nature. So I just want to encourage you that I do not believe that the Bible is against homosexuality. The Bible is against all kinds of other things, going out on your wife. hey, you know, we reelected an official that did that, and they stoned them in the Bible. But I don't know of an instance in the Bible that anybody is crucified or punished for being a natural-born homosexual person.
Senator, I was at Presbyterian when you were at Walford, and I was also in the Army, so that guy you were talking about wasn't me, I hope.
No, I wasn't going to say, but no.
For a legacy for two young daughters,
Yes.
I cannot think of a better thing than someone that's willing to say publicly, I've changed and I was wrong. And 7 or 8 years ago, I never thought I'd be sitting in a room hearing these words from you. And so that's very helpful for me. You've said we several times, and over the course, I don't think we're going to have a vote here. I think the courts may change things before we get back to that. But knowing that someone that is as good a fighter as you are willing to come to this group and have this conversation tonight is really fantastic. So I want to thank you and Tammy for taking your time to spend with us tonight.
Pleasure.
And to share this journey.
My honor.